All right. Now, you kind of went over this really quickly, and this is one of the most interesting aspects of the whole Alec Station story to me. And it has to do with Doug Miller and Mark Rossini. There were two FBI agents assigned to Alec Station. CIA officer Michael N. Casey, also assigned to Alec Station. And Alec Station's deputy chief, Tom Wilshire. And I'm going to read, this is a rather long question, but it has to be read so people understand exactly what happened. And all of this information is from historycommons.org. On January 5th, 2000, Doug Miller writes a cable to notify the FBI, quote, that 9/11 hijacker Khalid Almidar has a U.S. visa, end quote. Under orders from Tom Wilshire, Michael N. Casey blocks this cable. Later in the day, Casey distributes a false cable to CIA stations overseas, quote, saying the information that 9/11 hijacker Khalid Almidar has a U.S. visa has been sent to the FBI for further investigation, end quote. The next day, according to author James Bamford, Mark Rossini was, quote, perplexed and outraged that the CIA would forbid the Bureau's notification on a matter so important, end quote. He confronted Casey on the subject, and the reason, according to Casey, for not notifying the FBI was that, quote, the next attack is going to happen in Southeast Asia. It's not the Bureau's jurisdiction. When we want the FBI to know about it, we'll let them know, end quote. And Rossini protests, saying, quote, they're here, end quote. It is FBI business, but to no avail. So even though he is an FBI agent, he cannot pass on the notification to the Bureau without permission from his superiors at Alec Station. The Justice Department's Office of Inspector General will later call the failure to pass the information to the FBI a, quote, significant failure, end quote, but will be unable to determine why the information was not passed on. So let me recap this really quickly. Somebody from the FBI wanted to draft a cable to send to the FBI to notify them that one of the hijackers has a U.S. visa. They were blocked by somebody from within the CIA, who later that day sent out a false cable saying that the FBI was notified. And then the next day was confronted by one of the FBI agents, Mark Rossini, and you know, she said she gave a reason as to why they couldn't do it. So my question to you is, it sounds to me that the real reason for not sending this cable has a criminal aspect to it. Do you agree or disagree?
I don't know if the reason for not sending the cable has a criminal aspect to it. The not sending the cable has a criminal aspect to it. And it's only further so when, so at the time you could call it a breach of protocol. Now, I actually have been trying to get in touch with a lawyer to break down each of the myriad crimes associated with some of these figures over the years, beginning with that and moving forward. But when it absolutely became a crime was in October of 2000, several months later. So let's say the CIA had their own game plan. And I tend to believe that the CIA had not had a lot of victories in the war on terror and was feeling a lot of heat. The pre-9/11 war on terror, the one that was going on and nobody really knew about it. And the FBI had been the lead agency under Clinton, and they had taken this law enforcement approach, and they'd been fairly successful. If an attack occurred or an attack, sometimes they would stop an attack, but they would round up a cell, they would put them on trial, using the old-fashioned justice system, and they would put them away. And so the CIA needed a big win, and they hated John O'Neill, the head of the FBI's the counterterror unit, and so they wanted to, in my opinion, they took an opportunity. They knew if they gave the lead to O'Neill, it's become an FBI thing, and maybe they felt he was bungled. I don't know. I can't get inside their heads. They decided to go another way, and we could speculate on what that was, but they withheld the info. Now, cut to October of 2000. The USS Cole gets bombed. Well, that same planning meeting that the guys who had entered the U.S. had also been attended by the leaders of the Cole bomb, the mastermind. And so as these crack John O'Neill FBI investigators start using old school techniques, no torture, tried and true techniques, detective and interview and so forth, they were able to figure out basically who the masterminds were, and they started to see that all these people had met and also exchanged money in a time period in January 2000 in Malaysia. So they asked CIA, do you know anything about this? And Ali Soufan, the FBI agent in charge, sent 3 messages over the course of about a 6-month period, each one more detailed, each one asking, do you have any info? The first one, they sent back a message, and again, this went to the Bin Laden office, so we know who can take some blame here. They sent a message back that just definitively said no. They ignored the second 2 requests. What Lawrence Wright, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who wrote The Looming Tower about this subject, has said is that he's always felt that this was obstruction of justice in the criminal investigation by the FBI of 17 dead U.S. sailors. But I also think it was part of the reason why they continued to withhold it up till 9/11. And again, this is only my view. But at that point, they had a choice to make. Either come clean and say, we have information about these people connected to the Cole, and then just take a giant slap on the wrist because they basically are responsible for these deaths by not sharing that information. Or they could double down and keep withholding and sort of hope that the FBI finds out these guys are in the U.S. on their own. And I believe that's basically the choice they made, and it blew up big time in their faces, quite literally, on 9/11.
Well, now, we talk about, one of the things the 9/11 Commission emphasized a lot was that people weren't sharing information. And I don't know why they were not sharing information, but to me, the individuals who made the decisions not to share information should have been held accountable. That I've said this before, if you own a business and somebody loses $1 million in your business, do you reward that person?
Right.
Or do you fire that person? And you fire that person. You hold them accountable so that these kinds of things don't happen again. And in a lot of cases, in too many cases, with regards to 9/11, we saw that people who failed to do their job were rewarded and promoted. And Michael Ann Casey, the individual who blocked the cable under orders from Tom Wilshire and then sent the false cable out, she was actually promoted, I believe, after 9/11.
Well, certainly the mysterious redhead, the one named Alfreda Bukowski, who was the office manager working closely with Tom Wilshire and the direct supervisor of Michael Ann Casey, she certainly was promoted, and she was promoted again and again within that. Even before 9/11, she got a promotion to deputy chief of Alec Station, and then I think within about a year and a half after, she was promoted to chief of Alec Station. And then when they closed the Bin Laden unit at Alec Station, they formed this sort of larger War on Terror unit that was called the Global Jihad Unit, and she became in charge of that. And to this day, continues running, the War on Terror in collaboration with the Counterterror Center chief at CIA. They're basically the 2 key players. So she was involved with drones. She was involved with the failure, to some extent, to get Bin Laden the first time. She was involved with the development of the torture program, the mistaken rendition of at least one individual, the innocent German who happened to have the same name as an Al-Qaeda guy, and on her instinct alone, they held him and tortured him for 5 months. So when you point out in kind of an abstract way the beauty of this idea of accountability and how simple it is that, you reward the behavior you want to see, and you punish the behavior you don't want to see because you're trying to create an outcome that's positive going forward. Well, this story gives us the lesson of that. Why did we need to fire her, hold her accountability to account, or all of these people at that time, post 9/11, when we had the opportunity? Why? Because if you don't, you get all of this stuff that I just listed that they continue to do afterwards.
Right. Well, I've always, and this is pure speculation on my part, but I've always felt that the reason that nobody was held accountable with regards to 9/11 is because the minute that you start holding people accountable, they start to talk.
Right.
You know, for instance, you know, you tell somebody that they didn't do their job, and then they say, well, what do you mean I didn't do my job? I did my job. It was so-and-so that blocked me from doing,
right.
you know, more of my job. And that's, you know, names start to be told. And that's why I think, you know, people were honestly not held accountable.